The night he wasn't meant to survive. No one noticed the boy at first. That was the strange part. The street was alive. Camera flashes popping like fireworks. Voices overlapping. Security radios crackling with quiet authority. A white billionaire had just stepped out of a luxury restaurant downtown, flanked by guards in black suits, confidence wrapped around him like armor. Beside him walked his teenage son, smiling, careless, untouchable in the way money teaches you to be. People leaned forward for a better look. Phones rose into the air. Names were whispered. But the boy in the faded hoodie stood a few steps back, half hidden by the crowd, unnoticed like he had been his whole life. His name was Eli. I am 17 years old, slim, quiet. He didn't belong there. He knew that. The restaurant was too bright, the people too polished. He had come downtown only because his friend begged him to. Just to walk, just to see another world for one night. Eli kept his hands in his pockets, shoulders slightly hunched, already planning how soon he could go home. That was when everything changed. A sudden push rippled through the crowd. A man stumbled forward. Then another. At first, it looked like excitement. Then I panic. Eli's eyes locked onto the man, forcing his way through people, his hand buried inside his jacket. Something about it felt wrong. Too fast, too focused. Eli's chest tightened before his mind could catch up. The man pulled out a gun. Everything slowed. The billionaire's son turned his head, confused, his smile fading just as the weapon came up. Security reached for their holsters, but they were a second too late. The gun fired. A sharp crack split the air. In that frozen moment, Eli saw it clearly. The path of the bullet, the fear on a face that had never known it before. He didn't think about his mother. He didn't think about his future. He didn't think about fear at all. His body moved on instinct. Eli stepped forward. Then I jumped. The bullet hit him square in the chest. The impact felt like a sledgehammer. His breath vanished instantly, stolen by pain, so intense it erased sound. He hit the ground hard, the world tilting, spinning. Somewhere above him, people screamed. Security fired back. The man with the gun dropped. But Eli didn't see any of that. All he could see was the sky, dark, wide, uncaring. Blood spread beneath him, warm and fast. His hands tried to press against his chest, but they felt weak, distant, like they didn't belong to him anymore. His vision blurred at the edges. The billionaire's son was on the ground too, but alive, unharmed, pulled back by security, shaking, eyes wide with shock. Eli wanted to speak, to say something, anything, but no sound came out. Faces appeared above him, strangers, distorted, panicked. Someone shouted for an ambulance. Someone else cried. The noise felt far away, like it belonged to another world. Eli's breathing slowed. Each breath felt heavier than the last, like dragging air through water. His thoughts scattered, slipping through his grasp. Did it work? He wondered dimly. Did I save him? Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Red and blue lights painted the buildings in frantic color. A paramedic knelt beside him, pressing hard against his chest. "Stay with me, kid," a voice said urgently. Eli tried, but the streetlights above him began to fade, one by one, like stars going out. As the ambulance doors slammed shut and the vehicle sped into the night, doctors fought to keep his heart beating. Machines were prepared, tubes were ready. And in a hospital hallway not far away, a doctor would soon turn to a trembling woman and say words that would change her life forever. He's alive, but he may not wake up. That night, the world would remember a billionaire's son. But the boy who took the bullet, the boy who was never meant to be there, slipped quietly into darkness. And the real story was only just beginning. Eli Carter didn't wake up to headlines. He woke up to silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the heavy, pressing kind that wraps around your chest and refuses to let go. Machines breathed for him, tubes fed him. Monitors spoke in steady beeps, keeping time in a world Eli no longer felt part of. Outside that room, his name was spreading. Teen hero saves billionaire's son. Selfless act on downtown street. A miracle of courage. But none of those people knew who Eli was. They didn't know the boy who woke up every morning before sunrise because his mother worked double shifts and needed help getting ready. They didn't know the teenager who skipped lunch most days to save money, who patched holes in his shoes instead of buying new ones, who learned early that survival came before dreams. Eli's mother, Renee, sat by his bed with swollen eyes and trembling hands. She hadn't slept in 2 days. She hadn't eaten. Every beep of the monitor felt like a question she was afraid to answer. She kept talking to him anyway. "You always did too much," she whispered, "always putting others first." She remembered the night he came home late from work with bruised knuckles, saying he had helped break up a fight that wasn't his. She remembered telling him the world wasn't fair, that good people didn't always get rewarded. Now he lay motionless, proof of that lesson. The doctor came in quietly, holding a clipboard like it weighed 100 pounds. "He's stable," he said, "but the bullet caused severe trauma. The coma could last days, weeks, even longer." Renee nodded, though the words barely registered. "What if he never wakes up?" she asked. The doctor didn't answer right away. "That's a possibility," he said gently. Down the hall, another family waited in a private room. Nathan Hale had never seen his father look small before. The billionaire who owned companies, buildings, and people's futures sat with his elbows on his knees, hands clasped together, staring at the floor like a man who had lost control for the first time in his life. "My son is alive," he kept saying, as if repeating it might make the guilt go away. "My son is alive, because that boy jumped." Nathan sat beside him, still wearing the clothes from that night. There was dried blood on his sleeve, not his own. "I should be dead," Nathan said quietly. His father looked up sharply. "Don't say that." "But it's true," Nathan replied. "He took the bullet meant for me." Silence fell between them. Later that night, Nathan slipped away from security and followed the signs to the intensive care unit. No cameras, no announcements, just him and the echo of his footsteps. He stopped outside Eli's room. For a long moment, he couldn't bring himself to go in. When he finally did, the sight hit him harder than the gunshot ever could. Eli looked smaller in the hospital bed, pale, still, nothing like the boy who had moved with such certainty, such speed. Nathan stood there, frozen. "I don't even know your name," he whispered. He pulled up a chair and sat down anyway. "I keep thinking," Nathan said softly, "that if I had noticed you, if I had seen you, maybe you wouldn't be here." The machines answered with steady beeps. Nathan swallowed hard. "I promise you something," he said, voice breaking. "If you wake up, your life won't go back to the way it was. I won't let it." He didn't know if Eli could hear him, but somewhere deep in the dark, a part of Eli stirred. Not awake, not aware, but holding on to the sound of a voice that refused to leave. Outside, the world kept moving. News trucks packed up, crowds thinned. Another story waited to replace this one. But inside that hospital room, time slowed to a crawl, and the boy behind the headlines continued to fight a battle no one could see. 6 inches from death, The doctors agreed on one thing. Eli Carter should have died. The bullet had entered just below his collarbone, shattered bone, torn muscle, and passed frighteningly close to his heart. 6 inches to the left, and the story would have ended on the street. 6 inches, and there would have been no machines, no waiting, no hope. Inside the operating room that night, surgeons worked without pause. Blood soaked through gloves. Voices stayed calm, even as seconds mattered more than skill. When the bleeding finally slowed and the monitors stabilized, one of the doctors stepped back and whispered something almost no one ever says anymore. He's strong, but strength alone didn't wake him. Days passed. Eli remained trapped in a place without time. He didn't dream the way people imagine dreams. There were no clear images, no faces, just feelings, pressure, falling. The sense of being pulled backward while something else kept tugging him forward. Voices drifted in and out. His mother's voice was the clearest. "You're not done," she said every morning. "You hear me? You are not done." She told him about his childhood, about the day he learned to ride a bike and scraped his knee but refused to cry, about how he used to give half his food to kids who had less than him, even when he didn't have much himself. "You always survive," she whispered. "That's who you are." At night, when visiting hours ended and the room grew quiet, another voice returned. Nathan. He never came with security. He wore plain clothes. Sometimes he didn't even speak at first. He just sat there, staring at the boy who had rewritten his future. "I used to think nothing bad could touch me," Nathan said one night. "I thought danger was something that happened to other people." He laughed weakly. "I didn't even see the gun at first. You did. You moved before anyone else." Nathan leaned closer. "Why?" he asked softly. "Why did you jump?" There was no answer. Not yet. Meanwhile, the world outside the hospital began to show its true shape. The headlines changed tone. "Teen remains unconscious. Hero in critical condition." Questions surround long-term recovery. It was a fight, and Eli Carter, the boy who took a bullet meant for someone else, was finally ready to pay the price of being a hero by surviving. Eli opened his eyes for the first time on a Tuesday morning. Not fully, not clearly, just enough to let light stab through the darkness and remind him that pain still existed. The world came back in pieces. The ceiling is too white, a sound too loud, a weight on his chest that made breathing feel like work. He tried to move and failed. Panic rushed in fast. His heart rate spiked, alarms chirping sharply as nurses flooded the room. Renee stood up so quickly, her chair fell backward, clattering against the floor. "Eli," she cried. "Baby, can you hear me?" He could, but his mouth wouldn't work. His body wouldn't obey. His thoughts felt trapped behind thick glass, pounding to get out. The doctor's voice cut through the noise. "Easy," he said. "You're safe. You've been through a lot." Safe. The word felt strange. They sedated him again, before fear could tear him apart. But something had changed. By the end of the week, Eli drifted in and out of shallow awareness. Sometimes he recognized voices. Sometimes he didn't. The pain was constant, sharp in his chest, dull everywhere else, but the confusion was worse. He learned quickly that waking up didn't mean returning to who he was. His right arm barely moved. His legs felt like they belonged to someone else. His voice came out as a whisper when it came out at all. "This is normal," the therapist told Renee gently. "The body needs time." Time, however, was something the world rarely gave for free. Outside the hospital, opinions hardened. Some praised Eli endlessly, calling him a hero, a guardian, a symbol of courage. Others questioned him. Why risk your life for someone rich? He didn't owe them anything. He should have stayed out of it. Renee heard it all. Through comments, through whispers, through the tone of people who looked at her son like a lesson instead of a human being. Nathan heard it too. At school, friends treated him differently now. Some were overly careful, others avoided the topic entirely. A few said what everyone else was thinking. "You got lucky," one boy muttered. "Someone else paid the price." Nathan didn't answer. Luck didn't look like a boy learning how to breathe without pain. One afternoon, Mr. Hale arranged a small press conference. Nothing flashy, no names, no cameras inside the hospital. He spoke carefully. "The young man who saved my son showed courage beyond measure," he said. "His recovery matters, his future matters." The words were strong, but the internet wanted more. People asked how much Eli was worth now, what reward he deserved, what price a life like his carried. Eli overheard a nurse mention it one evening. "They're arguing about him online," she said quietly to another nurse, "like he's a headline, not a person." That night, Eli cried for the first time since waking. Not loud, not dramatic, just silent tears sliding down his temples into the pillow he couldn't turn away from. He remembered the moment before the bullet, the instinct, the choice. And now, here he was, broken, questioned, measured. Nathan sat beside him the next day, noticing the tear tracks. "I hate how they talk about you," Nathan said, "like your life is something to debate." Eli struggled, then finally forced out a few words. "I didn't jump for them." Nathan leaned in. "Then why?" he asked softly. Eli swallowed hard. "Because someone had to." The room went quiet. At that moment, Nathan understood something heavy and uncomfortable. The world decided your worth long before you ever spoke. And Eli, the boy who took a bullet, was now fighting a second battle, not for his life, but for the right to define it himself. "Just tell me, and I'll adjust immediately." Recovery didn't arrive like victory. It came like punishment. Every morning, Eli was wheeled into a room filled with mirrors and metal bars. The smell of disinfectant burned his nose. The floor was cold. The lights were unforgiving. This was where he learned the truth. Surviving the bullet had only been the beginning. "Sit up," the therapist said gently. Eli tried. His muscles screamed. His vision blurred. His body shook, like it didn't remember how to belong to him anymore. When he finally managed to lift himself, pain shot through his chest so sharp it stole his breath. He collapsed back onto the chair, drenched in sweat. Recovery didn't arrive like victory. It came like punishment. Every morning, Eli was wheeled into a room filled with mirrors and metal bars. The smell of disinfectant burned his nose. The floor was cold. The lights were unforgiving. This was where he learned the truth. Surviving the bullet had only been the beginning. "Sit up," the therapist said gently. Eli tried. His muscles screamed. His vision blurred. His body shook, like it didn't remember how to belong to him anymore. When he finally managed to lift himself, pain shot through his chest so sharp it stole his breath. He collapsed back onto the chair, drenched in sweat. Later, alone in his room, Eli stared at his hands. They looked the same, but they weren't. He tried to close his fingers into a fist. His right hand obeyed slowly. His left trembled, lagging behind like it was unsure whether it still belonged to him. Anger rose, hot and sudden. He slammed his good hand against the bed. Pain flared. Worth it, because pain proved he was still here. Nathan noticed the change first. Eli spoke less now, his words careful. measured, like each sentence cost him something. The jokes were gone. The quiet determination had hardened into something heavier. "You don't have to push this hard," Nathan said one afternoon. Eli didn't look at him. "I do," he replied hoarsely. "If I stop, I might not start again." Nathan didn't argue. He had watched privilege smooth every obstacle in his life. This was different. This was raw. One evening, Mr. Hale visited during therapy hours. He stood near the doorway, uncomfortable, in a room that didn't bend to wealth. He watched Eli struggle to take a single step between the bars, jaw clenched, sweat dripping down his face. "Why don't we slow down?" Mr. Hale suggested quietly. "You've been through enough." Eli stopped. He turned slowly, leaning heavily on the bars. "With respect," Eli said, voice shaking, "you don't get to tell me what enough is." The room went silent. Mr. Hale opened his mouth, then closed it. He nodded once. "You're right," he said. "I apologize." That night, Eli couldn't sleep. His chest ached, his legs throbbed. His mind replayed the moment over and over. Not the shooting, but the words. "You've been through enough." Enough, according to who? The next morning, the therapist handed him a mirror. "I want you to look," she said, "and tell me what you see." Eli barely recognized himself. The scar stretched across his chest like a reminder carved into skin. His shoulders were thinner. His eyes are older. Something had been taken, and something else had replaced it. "I see someone broken," Eli said quietly. The therapist shook her head. "I see someone rebuilding," she replied. That afternoon, Nathan brought him a notebook. "For when you're tired of talking," he said. Eli opened it slowly. On the first page, he wrote 3 shaky words. "I am still here." It wasn't a victory speech. It wasn't hope, but it was a promise. Waking up had a cost. Pain, anger, loss. But Eli was paying it one breath at a time. And for the first time since the bullet, he wasn't just surviving. He was choosing to live. By the second month, Eli was no longer invisible. That should have felt like progress. Instead, it felt like pressure. People knew his name now. Nurses whispered it with respect. Doctors spoke to him slower, softer. Visitors, some invited, some not, asked to see him, to shake his hand, to say thank you, like gratitude could balance what he had lost. Eli smiled when he could. Nodding when speaking hurts too much, but inside, something tightened every time someone said the same words. "You saved a life." Because the words never came alone. They carried expectations. A local news producer asked for an interview. A charity wanted his presence at an event. A politician's aide suggested a photo opportunity. Renee shut most of it down. But not all of it could be avoided. "You don't owe anyone anything," she told him one night, brushing his hair back gently. Eli nodded, but he wasn't sure he believed her. Gratitude had a way of turning into debt. Nathan felt it too. At home, people praised him endlessly. "You're so lucky," they said. "You were protected. You were chosen." Chosen. The word made his stomach turn. He started visiting Eli later at night. When the hospital quieted and expectations loosened their grip. They talked less now. Silence felt safer. One evening, Nathan broke it. "My dad wants to help more," he said carefully. "Long-term, school, housing, anything you want." Eli stared at the ceiling. "Anything?" he asked. Nathan nodded. Eli turned his head slowly. "Then don't make me a project," he said, "or a story, or a reminder of what almost happened." Nathan swallowed. "I don't see you like that," he said. "I know," Eli replied, "but everyone else might." The next day, a woman from a foundation visited Eli's room. She spoke kindly, professionally, her smile practiced. "We'd love to support you," she said, "but we'd need your story, your presence. People connect to faces." Eli listened quietly. "And if I say no?" he asked. She hesitated. "Well, support is competitive," she replied. "Stories matter." After she left, Eli sat in silence for a long time. No cameras, no contracts, no expectations, just action. Now everything felt conditional. During therapy that afternoon, Eli's leg gave out without warning. He hit the floor hard, pain exploding through his side. The therapist rushed to help him up, but he waved her off, breath ragged. "Give me a second," he muttered. He stayed there longer than necessary, palms pressed against the cold floor, grounding himself. "This is real," he thought. "This is mine." That evening, he wrote again, in the notebook Nathan gave him. "I didn't jump to be owned." The words shook as much as his hand. When Mr. Hale visited later that week, Eli spoke before anyone else could. "I appreciate everything," Eli said, voice steady, "but I need one thing clear." Mr. Hale listened. "I don't want my life to belong to what I did that night," Eli continued. "I want it to belong to what I do next." The billionaire nodded slowly. "That's fair," he said, "and rare." For the first time, Eli felt seen, not as a hero, not as a debt, but as a person trying to reclaim control. Still, the weight didn't disappear, because the world loved heroes, but it didn't always know how to let them be human. And as Eli learned that lesson the hard way, he also began to understand something else. Surviving the bullet was only half the story. Surviving what came after, the expectations, the pressure, the silent debts, might be the harder fight. Eli didn't believe in destiny. If destiny were real, he wouldn't have grown up counting coins before counting dreams. Destiny wouldn't have waited until he was 17 to notice him, only after a bullet nearly erased him. So when things around him began to feel connected, he told himself it was coincidence, nothing more. By the third month, Eli was discharged from the hospital and moved into a rehabilitation center. The building was quieter, calmer, filled with people fighting private battles no one filmed or praised. Here, he wasn't the hero. He was just another patient learning how to rebuild. That comforted him, but questions followed him anyway. During one of his sessions, a therapist asked something simple. "Do you know your father?" she said, jotting notes. Eli shrugged carefully. His chest still ached when he moved too fast. "Never met him," he replied. "He left before I could remember." She nodded, waiting. "My mom doesn't talk about him much," Eli added. "Just says he wasn't ready to stay." The therapist paused her pen. "And how does that make you feel?" Eli hesitated. "I don't know," he said. "Like, there's a missing page, something I'm supposed to understand, but don't." That night, the thought followed him. A missing page. Renee noticed the change. "You've been quiet," she said, as she helped him settle into bed. "I was always quiet," Eli replied. "This is different," she said gently. "This is thinking quietly." Eli stared at the ceiling. "Mom," he said slowly, "what was my dad like?" Renee froze, just for a second. Then she smiled, a little too quickly. "He was smart," she said. "Ambitious. He had big plans." "Why'd he leave?" Her smile faded. "He didn't leave you," she said carefully. "He left the situation." Eli didn't push, but the words stayed with him. At the same time, Mr. Hale found himself asking questions he'd avoided for decades. Late one night, alone in his study, he opened an old locked drawer. Inside were documents he hadn't touched in years. Contracts, letters, reminders of choices made in a different life. One folder stopped him cold. A name, a date, a memory he had buried so deeply he convinced himself it didn't matter anymore. He closed the drawer quickly, heart pounding. Coincidence, he told himself. Just coincidence. But coincidences had a way of returning. The next day, Mr. Hale watched Eli from across the rehab room as the boy struggled through exercises, jaw tight, refusing help even when pain showed clearly on his face. Something about that determination felt familiar, too familiar. Nathan noticed his father staring. "What?" Nathan asked. Mr. Hale shook his head. "Nothing," he said. "Just thinking." Later, Eli sat outside in the rehab center's small courtyard, notebook resting on his lap. He had started writing again. Not about the shooting, not about pain, but about questions. Why do I feel connected to people who were never part of my life? Why does survival feel like discovery instead of relief? He stopped writing and looked up at the sky. For the first time since waking up, Eli wasn't just trying to heal his body. He was searching for meaning. And somewhere, unseen and unspoken, threads from his past were tightening, slowly pulling him toward a truth no one was ready to say out loud. Not yet. Because some truths don't arrive gently, they wait, and when they come, they change everything. Rehabilitation taught Eli patience in ways pain never could. Pain was loud. Patience was quiet and cruel. Every day began the same way, stretching, breathing, learning how to trust muscles that betrayed him without warning. Progress came in inches, not miles, and some mornings it felt like those inches were being taken back overnight. Still, Eli showed up. He learned how to walk longer without the bars, how to steady his hands enough to write full sentences, how to breathe through the sharp reminder in his chest that never fully left. But it wasn't his body that troubled him most anymore. It was his name. During a routine check-in, a new administrator asked him to confirm his details. "Eli Carter," she said, eyes scanning the screen. "Date of birth confirmed." She paused. "Emergency contact, Renee Carter," she continued. "Relation, mother." Eli nodded. Then she frowned slightly. "That's strange," she muttered. "What?" Eli asked. She hesitated, then smiled apologetically. "Probably nothing," she said. "Just an old record. Ignore me." But Eli didn't. Later that day, he asked Renee directly. "Mom," he said carefully, "was my last name ever different?" Renee's hands stilled on the bag she was packing. "No," she said too quickly. "Why would it be?" Eli studied her face, the way her eyes avoided his, the way her shoulders tensed. "Someone said something today," he replied, "about an old record." Renee forced a small laugh. "Hospitals mess things up all the time," she said. "You know that." Eli let it go, but the feeling stayed. That same evening, Mr. Hale sat in a quiet office with a private investigator he hadn't planned on hiring. Not officially, not yet. "I'm not asking you to dig," Mr. Hale said. "Just confirm some timelines." The investigator nodded. "Names?" he asked. Mr. Hale hesitated, then said one. A name he hadn't spoken aloud in years. His brother's. The room felt smaller after that. Mr. Hale's brother had died young, too young. A brilliant man with reckless choices and a habit of disappearing when things got complicated. Their relationship had been fractured. Arguments left unfinished. Calls never returned. And then there was a woman. A name Mr. Hale remembered only when guilt refused to stay buried. "Just timelines," Mr. Hale repeated almost to himself. At the rehab center, Nathan noticed Eli's distraction. "You okay?" he asked as they sat outside, the sun warming the courtyard. I feel like I'm standing near a door I didn't know existed, Eli said. And now I can't stop thinking about what's behind it. Nathan frowned. Do you want to open it? Eli thought for a moment. I think it's already opening, he replied. That night, Eli dreamed. Not of the shooting, not in the hospital. He dreamed of a man he didn't recognize, tall, sharp-eyed, standing at a distance, watching him with something between pride and regret. When Eli tried to call out, the man faded. He woke up with his heart racing. The next morning, the investigator called Mr. Hale. I found something, he said carefully. Nothing conclusive yet, but there are overlaps. Mr. Hale closed his eyes. Overlaps. That was the word he feared. At the same time, Renee sat alone at her kitchen table, staring at an old envelope she had sworn never to open again. Inside were documents she had hidden for years, not lies, but truths she believed would protect her son. Her hands shook as she whispered to the empty room. I was trying to keep you safe. Across the city, 3 lives moved forward, unaware they were circling the same truth from different directions. A truth tied to a name, a bloodline, a brother long gone, and very soon the question would no longer be if the door opened, but who would be standing on the other side when it did. Mr. Hale hadn't spoken his brother's name in years, not out loud, not even in thought, at least not fully. Some names carried weight, and his brother's carried regret. Bringing it back into the open felt like reopening a wound he had learned to live with by ignoring it. But now, ignoring it was no longer possible. The investigator's message replayed in his mind all night. There are overlaps. In the quiet hours before dawn, Mr. Hale sat alone at his desk and pulled out an old photograph. 2 brothers stood side by side, younger then, shoulders squared, faces full of plans that hadn't yet fallen apart. His brother smiled wider in the picture. Always had. Always reckless with hope. You never finished anything, Mr. Hale muttered, and now you've left me with questions. Later that morning, he requested Eli's medical file, not the public version, not the summaries released for press, but the raw data, blood type, genetic markers, trauma notes. The doctor hesitated. Sir, she said carefully, there are privacy protocols. I know, Mr. Hale interrupted, and I will follow them, but I need clarity. The doctor nodded slowly. I can't confirm anything, she said, but I can tell you this. Some results raised flags. Nothing alarming, just unusual matches. Mr. Hale's jaw tightened. Across town, Renee finally opened the envelope. The paper inside had yellowed with time. Names, dates, a signature she had stared at for years without letting herself feel what it meant. She had convinced herself the truth would only complicate things. She had been wrong. At the rehab center, Eli's progress stalled. Not physically, mentally. He missed steps he had mastered days earlier. Lost focus mid-session. When the therapist asked him what was wrong, he shook his head. I feel like something's pulling at me, he said, like I'm about to remember something I never knew. That afternoon, Nathan found him staring at a wall. You look like you're somewhere else, Nathan said. I keep thinking about my dad, Eli replied quietly. About who he was, about why he left. Nathan sat beside him. Do you want to find out? He asked. Eli hesitated. What if knowing changes everything? He said. Nathan answered without hesitation. It already has, he replied. That night, Eli dreamed again. This time, the man was closer. Same sharp eyes, same familiar posture. But now, there was another figure beside him. Older, steadier, watching from a distance with an expression Eli couldn't name. When he woke, his heart pounded. He grabbed his notebook and wrote a single line. Some answers don't come from the past. They come from blood. Meanwhile, the investigator delivered a sealed folder to Mr. Hale's office. Inside were timelines, addresses, employment records, and one photograph. Mr. Hale stared at it until his chest tightened. The woman in the picture was Renee, years younger, eyes hopeful, standing beside his brother outside a small apartment building. The dates aligned, too perfect. Mr. Hale closed the folder slowly. "It's not possible," he whispered. But the truth didn't care what was possible. At the rehab center, Renee arrived to visit Eli, her face pale, her movements careful. She watched her son struggle through exercises, pride and fear twisting together in her chest. He looked at her suddenly. "Mom," he said, "you'd tell me if there was something I should know, right?" Renee froze. Her answer came too slowly. "Of course," she said. "Always." But lies told for love still carried consequences. As night fell, 3 people lay awake in different parts of the city, each holding a piece of the same truth, each afraid of what would happen when those pieces finally came together. Because by now, it wasn't a question of if the truth would surface. It was a question of who would speak it first. And when they did, nothing would remain the same. Mr. Hale didn't sleep that night. The folder lay unopened on his desk, as if closing it again might undo what he already knew. He had built an empire by confronting hard facts, quickly, decisively. But this was different. This wasn't business. This was blood. At sunrise, he opened the folder again, slowly this time. He studied the timelines, the addresses, the dates that overlapped too cleanly to ignore. His brother's handwriting appeared on a few documents, familiar and infuriating in equal measure. Then there was the medical notation, a genetic marker, rare, inherited. Mr. Hale's hands trembled as he reached for his phone and made a call he had avoided for years. A doctor answered. "I need confirmation," Mr. Hale said quietly. "Hypothetical confirmation." There was a pause. "If 2 people share this marker," the doctor said carefully, "they are almost certainly related, parent and child, or close family." Mr. Hale closed his eyes. His brother's face surfaced in his memory, laughing, reckless, disappearing for months, returning with excuses and charm. A man who loved deeply and left quickly. A man who never stayed long enough to face consequences. A man who had a son. Mr. Hale ended the call and sat in silence. Across the city, Renee stood in front of her bathroom mirror, gripping the sink so tightly her knuckles ached. She hadn't planned to tell Eli today, or tomorrow, or ever. But secrets had a way of rotting from the inside out. She pulled the old envelope from her bag and stared at it again. "I did what I thought was right," she whispered to her reflection. "I protected him." At the rehab center, Eli felt the tension before he understood it. People spoke softer around him. His therapist asked fewer questions. Nathan seemed distracted, checking his phone more than usual, avoiding eye contact when Eli joked about it. "You're acting weird," Eli said finally. Nathan sighed. "My dad's been unsettled," he admitted. "Something from his past." Eli nodded slowly. "Funny," he said. "Feels like everyone's past is catching up lately." That afternoon, Mr. Hale arrived at the rehab center unannounced. No security entourage, no assistants, just him. He stood at the end of the hall, watching Eli take careful steps between the bars, watching the set of his jaw, the way he refused help even when his legs shook. The resemblance hit him all at once. Not to himself, to his brother. Same stubborn pride, same refusal to quit, same eyes that didn't ask permission to exist. Mr. Hale felt something crack in his chest. After therapy, he asked to speak to Renee privately. They stood in a small consultation room, the air thick with words neither wanted to say first. "You knew," Mr. Hale said quietly. Renee didn't pretend. "Yes," she replied. "I knew who his father was." Mr. Hale swallowed. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. Renee's eyes flashed. "Because your brother disappeared," she said. "And you were building a world where people like us didn't belong." The words landed hard. "I didn't want my son growing up as a secret," she continued. "Or a burden. Or a mistake." Mr. Hale nodded slowly. "He deserves the truth," he said. "Yes," Renee replied. "When he's ready." They both knew that moment was coming fast. Too fast. That evening, Eli wheeled himself onto the balcony outside his room, needing air, needing space. He watched the city glow as night fell, unaware that the ground beneath his life had already shifted. Nathan joined him. "My dad's acting like he's seen a ghost," Nathan said quietly. Eli smiled faintly. "Maybe he has," he replied. In a different part of the city, Mr. Hale sat alone again, holding the photograph of Renee and his brother. "You should have told me," he whispered to the image, but blame didn't matter anymore, because the truth had chosen its moment. And soon, whether anyone was ready or not, Eli would learn who he really was. Not as a hero, not as a symbol, but as a son. Sensed it before anyone said a word. The room felt different that morning. Too quiet, like the sound itself was holding its breath. Renee arrived earlier than usual, her smile careful, her eyes red at the edges. Nathan showed up late, pacing near the window instead of joking like he always did. And then Mr. Hale walked in. No announcement, no rush. He closed the door behind him and stood there for a moment, as if he needed to remember how to speak, without contracts or control. "Can we talk?" he asked. Eli nodded. Renee sat beside her son, close enough that their shoulders touched. Mr. Hale pulled a chair forward and sat across from them. He didn't look like a billionaire then. He looked like a man who had waited too long. "I owe you the truth," Mr. Hale said. "All of it." Eli's chest tightened. "About what?" he asked. Mr. Hale glanced at Renee. She nodded once. "My brother," Mr. Hale began, voice steady but low. "He died years ago. You never met him. Most people didn't know him the way I did." Eli listened, heart beating faster. "He was brilliant," Mr. Hale continued, "and careless. He loved deeply, but he didn't stay long enough to protect the people he loved." Renee's hand squeezed Eli's. Mr. Hale took a breath. "He's your father." The words landed softly, too softly. Eli waited for something else. Shock, anger, disbelief. But what came first was silence. A long, hollow silence that rang in his ears. "No," Eli said finally. "That's not possible." Renee's voice broke. "I didn't want you to find out like this," she whispered. "I wanted to protect you." Eli turned to her slowly. "You let me grow up thinking I was unwanted," he said, like he just left. "He did leave," Renee replied, tears spilling now. "But not because of you." Mr. Hale leaned forward. "My brother didn't know how to stay," he said. "And when he died, I didn't know how to reach you. I chose distance instead of responsibility." Eli laughed once, a sharp, humorless sound. "So I took a bullet," he said quietly. "For my cousin." The room froze. Nathan's face drained of color. "I didn't know," Nathan said quickly. "Eli, I swear, I didn't know." Eli stared at the floor. I jumped because it felt right, he said. Not because of blood, not because of money. Mr. Hale nodded. And that's why this hurts, he said. Because you were braver than all of us. Eli looked up then, eyes burning. Don't make this noble, he said. You don't get to rewrite my pain into something convenient. Mr. Hale swallowed. You're right, he said. I don't. The anger came next. Not loud, not explosive, heavy, years of unanswered questions pressed into one moment. The absent father, the silence, the way his life had felt like it existed on the edge of something he couldn't name. Eli stood, shaky but determined. I need time, he said. I need space. Renee nodded through tears. Take all the time you need. Mr. Hale stood as well. I'm not asking to replace your father, he said. I'm asking for the chance to do better than my brother did. Eli didn't answer. That night, alone in his room, Eli opened his notebook and turned to a blank page. He stared at it for a long time before writing. I am more than where I come from. He closed the notebook and leaned back, breathing through the ache in his chest. Blood explained the past, but choice would decide the future. And for the first time since the bullet, Eli understood something clearly. The truth didn't define him. What he did with it would. Eli didn't speak to anyone for 2 days. Not his mother, not Nathan, not Mr. Hale. He attended therapy in silence, completing exercises with mechanical focus. Each step felt heavier than the last, not because of pain, but because every movement carried a question he couldn't escape. Who am I now that I know? At night, sleep came in short, broken pieces. When it did, it brought memories that weren't his, faces he had never met, moments he had never lived, stitched together by blood and absence. He woke with his jaw clenched and his chest tight, fighting the urge to push the truth back into the dark. On the third day, he asked to see Mr. Hale. They met in a small conference room away from the rehab floor. No guards, no assistants, just 2 men separated by decades and one shared name they didn't know how to carry. Mr. Hale stood when Eli entered. You don't have to, he began. I do, Eli said, taking a seat, but I need to say this my way. Mr. Hale nodded and sat. Eli stared at the table for a moment, gathering himself. I grew up believing my father chose not to stay, Eli said. That there was something about me that wasn't enough to make him stay. Mr. Hale closed his eyes briefly. My brother wasn't capable of staying, he said. Not for anyone. That doesn't change what it did to me, Eli replied, but it helps me stop blaming myself. Silence settled between them, heavy but honest. I don't want a replacement, Eli continued. I don't want a last name handed to me like compensation. And I don't want my life rewritten because of blood. Mr. Hale listened without interrupting. What I do want, Eli said, voice firmer now, is choice. The same choice I made that night. The same one I keep making every morning when I get out of bed. Mr. Hale nodded slowly. Then tell me what that choice looks like, he said. Eli met his eyes. It looks like you are helping without owning, he said. Like support without control, like an opportunity without expectation. Mr. Hale exhaled, something like relief passing through him. I can do that, he said. And if I ever forget, remind me. Later that afternoon, Eli finally spoke to Nathan. They sat outside, the city stretching quietly below them. I keep thinking about that night, Nathan said. If I hadn't been there, you were there, Eli interrupted, and so was I. That's the truth. Nathan swallowed. I don't know how to be around you now, he admitted, not without feeling like I owe you everything. Eli smiled faintly. Then don't owe me, he said. Stand with me instead. Nathan nodded, eyes shining. That evening, Renee found Eli packing his notebook into his bag. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. "I will be," Eli said. Then, after a pause, "You should have told me, but I understand why you didn't." Renee broke down then. Years of fear and protection finally spilling free. Eli held her awkwardly, still careful with his healing body, but present. "I'm proud of you," she whispered, "for surviving, for choosing who you are." The next morning, Eli stood in front of a small group at the rehab center. Patients, staff, a few quiet observers. No cameras, no speeches prepared. "I didn't choose what happened to me," Eli said, "but I choose what happens next." He talked about recovery, about identity, about how hero stories often end too soon, right at the moment when living gets hard. "I'm still here," he said simply, "and that has to mean something." The room was quiet when he finished, but it was the kind of quiet that listens. That night, Eli wrote one last line in his notebook before closing it for good. "Truth is a beginning, not an ending. Tomorrow would bring the future." And for the first time, Eli was ready to meet it on his own terms. The first time Eli walked outside without assistance, the air felt different. Not lighter, not easy, just honest. The sidewalk stretched ahead of him in uneven lines, every crack a reminder that balance wasn't something you earned once. It was something you practiced. He moved slowly, carefully, his scar pulling tight with each step, but he moved forward. That mattered. People noticed him less now, and that was a gift. No cameras, no whispered hero talk, just a young man relearning the shape of his days. Nathan walked beside him, hands in his pockets. "Still hurts?" Nathan asked. "Every step," Eli replied. Then he smiled slightly. "That's how I know it's real." They stopped at the edge of a small park. Kids laughed somewhere nearby. A dog barked. Life moved without ceremony. "I'm going back to school," Eli said suddenly. Nathan turned to him. "Already?" "Not full time," Eli said, "but I need something that belongs to me again." Behind them, Mr. Hale watched from a distance, just as promised. No hovering, no directing. He had kept his word. Support without ownership. Resources were there, quietly, without contracts or expectations. That restraint mattered more than any check ever could. Renee joined them, carrying coffee she didn't finish, just like she always did. She looked tired, but lighter. The truth had cost them both something. It had also given something back. "You ready?" she asked Eli. He nodded. Weeks later, Eli stood in a modest community hall with folding chairs and a hand-painted banner. No grand opening, no headlines, just people who showed up. The space wasn't named after him. That had been his decision. "It's not about me," he'd said. "It's about what comes after." The center offered tutoring, physical rehab referrals, counseling, a quiet place for kids who felt unseen to sit and breathe. Eli spoke briefly. "I didn't save a life to become a symbol," he said. "I saved a life because in that moment, I could. This place exists so others don't have to wait for moments like that to be noticed." People nodded. Some cried. No one clapped too loudly. Later, alone, Eli returned to the street where it had all begun. The spot looked smaller than he remembered. No markers, no plaque, just concrete and passing feet. He stood there for a long time, listening to the city move around him. The memory came back, not the pain, not the fear, but the certainty, the clarity of a choice made without expectation. He touched the scar through his shirt. "Thank you," he whispered, not to fate, not to chance, but to the version of himself who had moved when it mattered. A year passed. Eli walked without thinking about it now. The pain dulled, then softened, then became a quiet echo he carried with respect. School continued. The center grew. Lives intersected in small, meaningful ways. One evening, Eli sat on a rooftop, city lights blinking awake. Mr. Hale joined him, keeping a careful distance. "I don't know if I'll ever make up for what my brother didn't do," Mr. Hale said. Eli considered that. "You don't have to," he replied. "Just don't disappear." Mr. Hale nodded. They sat in silence, not as savior and saved, not as benefactor and beneficiary, but as people learning how to stay. Far below, a siren wailed and faded. Eli stood, steady on his feet, and looked out over the city that had nearly taken everything, and then, strangely, given something back. The bullet hadn't ended his life. It hadn't defined it either. It had simply drawn a line. On one side, who he was before. On the other, who he chose to become. And every day after, Eli crossed that line on his own terms. The reunion wasn't planned. There were no press releases, no cameras waiting outside gates, no statements written by lawyers. It happened quietly, in a private home just outside the city. Eli stood at the entrance for a long moment before stepping inside. His scar tugged slightly as he moved, an old reminder, but he didn't stop. Nathan walked beside him, nervous in a way Eli had never seen before. Inside, the Hale family waited. An aunt rose first, eyes wide, hands pressed to her mouth. An older cousin stared openly, confusion and curiosity mixing on his face. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. They had seen Eli before, on screens, in headlines, in whispers, but never like this, not standing there, not breathing, not real. Mr. Hale cleared his throat. "This is Eli," he said simply, "my brother's son." No one spoke at first. Then a woman stepped forward, Mr. Hale's sister. Her voice shook. "He has your brother's eyes," she said. Eli felt something tighten in his chest. Not pain, not anger, recognition. Someone pulled out a phone without thinking. Another person whispered his name. Nathan noticed and gently lowered the phone. "Not today," he said. Dinner was awkward at first, polite, careful. Everyone is afraid of saying the wrong thing. But slowly, the stiffness faded. Stories were shared. About Eli's father, about childhood moments Eli had never known existed. Laughter appeared, then silence, then understanding. Eli didn't feel like he belonged, but for the first time, he didn't feel excluded either. Outside those walls, the world noticed. Someone leaked a photo, a shadow, a caption with no confirmation. The internet did the rest. Is the hero related to the billionaire? Secret family connection? Was it fate or blood? Rumors spread faster than truth ever could. Some said Eli had known all along. Others said the reunion was staged. A few claimed the bullet had never been random. Eli didn't respond, neither did Mr. Hale, because some truths weren't owed to the public. Weeks later, Eli passed a newsstand. His face stared back at him from a magazine cover, half in shadow, half in light. He didn't stop. He kept walking. Behind him, the city buzzed with theories, opinions, and noise. Ahead of him was something quieter. Family that didn't erase his past. A future that wasn't built on rumor. And a life that would never again be defined by a single moment. The bullet had brought him to their door. But it didn't decide who stayed. That choice, like everything else that mattered, belonged to Eli.